So this is Mark chapter 9, and we go from verse 14 through to 23. When they came back to the disciples, they saw a large crowd around them and some scribes arguing with them. Immediately, when the crowd saw him, they were amazed and began running up to greet him. And he asked them, "What are you discussing with them?" And one of the crowd answered, "Teacher, I brought you my son, possessed with a spirit which makes him mute. And when it seizes him, it slams him to the ground, and he foams at the mouth and grinds his teeth and stiffens out. I told your disciples to cast it out, and they could not do it." And he answers them and says, "O unbelieving generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring him to me." And they brought him the boy to him. And when he saw him, immediately the spirit threw him into a convulsion, and falling to the ground, he began rolling around and foaming at the mouth. And he asked his father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And he said, "From childhood. It has often thrown him both into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." And Jesus said to him, "If you can, all things are possible to him who believes." And immediately the boy's father cried out and said, "I do believe. Help my unbelief." So this is the Lord Jesus. He comes down from the Mount of Transfiguration. Now it says here that the crowd, when they saw him, they were amazed and began running up to greet him. Now we don't know why the crowd was amazed. It doesn't tell us. But perhaps we know that when Moses came down from the mountain, his face was shining. Perhaps there was something about the Lord Jesus, that when they saw him come down from the mountain, there was something about him which caused the crowd to be, Mark could only describe it as they were amazed at him. And they come down, and the Lord Jesus comes down, and there's this situation where there is this man with his child who is mute and deaf and also has convulsions. And he had brought his child into the place where God's people were, to the place of the disciples. And it says, and they couldn't cast this demon out. Now, again, I think I say this quite often, is that this is a man who, when he didn't receive the deliverance for his child, he carried on. He was persistent. And he comes when he sees Jesus. He comes to Jesus and he said, "Look, this is my child, my son. He's deaf, he's mute, and he has these convulsions ever since he was a child." And he says, "But if you can do anything, can you do something for my child?" And Jesus, he says, "If you can." You can almost hear not indignation towards this man. If you can, you're saying to me, if I can do anything, of course I can do something for your situation. Of course I can. All things are possible to him who believes. All things. And the man, I think, goes right to the nub of the situation. The boy's father cried out and said, "I do believe. Help my unbelief." This man had shown faith in that his child had this terrible need, and he had brought them first to God's people, to the disciples, perhaps to Andrew or to Nathaniel or to one of the others, and they couldn't. They tried to cast out the demons like they did when they went out with the 12, but nothing seemed to happen. And the man didn't go away. He waited for Jesus. And when Jesus comes, he says, "If you can, And Jesus said, of course I can. There's nothing wrong with my power. There's nothing wrong with my ability. All things, listen to this, all things are possible to him who believes. And the man says, yeah, I believe. And he'd shown his faith in that he had brought his child to Jesus. But he said, help my unbelief. And we'll see the glorious thing that happened to him in the next reading.